How did overwhelmingly peaceful protests against police brutality turn into a bloodbath in Lagos? The anger still palpable in Africa's largest city after the army opened fire on unarmed demonstrators Tuesday in the city centre. At least 12 killed, according to Amnesty International. Why the bloodbath at Lekki Toll Plaza? What response from Nigeria's old guard in the face of a youth-driven movement that's unmoved by the announcement last week of the dissolution of the notorious plainclothed SARS police unit? Who are the demonstrators who are transcending traditional political fault lines? After the US, France, and elsewhere, why now? Why is the call for police reform resonating so loudly among Nigerians who say they've had enough? Where to start if you want better and more accountable law enforcement? Today in the France 24 debate, we're asking if Nigeria has reached its boiling point, and we're joined at this time from Abuja by Oluwole Ojewale, Assistant Programs Manager for the Clean Foundation, your association which deals with that idea of police reform. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me this evening.
We also welcome back to the show, political consultant Emmanuel Iga, Director of Phobos International. Welcome back.
Thank you.
The France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. Yes, central Lagos still seething and smoldering, you could say. Shots ringing out earlier in Nigeria's largest city, with a prison set ablaze in the upscale Ikoyi neighborhood of the center of the city. An anger expressed, in several metropolises across the country after Tuesday's bloodbath. Yinka Oyetade has more.
Broadcasting at this TV studio was suddenly brought to a halt after protesters stormed the building, setting it alight. Television Continental is one of several buildings in Lagos to have been torched by anti-police demonstrators. This as the country reels from what Lagos State Governor dubbed one of the darkest hours in Nigeria's history, after peaceful protests against police brutality took a dark turn in Lagos Tuesday.
Everyone sit down, sit down, sit down!
When security forces reportedly opened fire on unarmed demonstrators.
It was brutal. It's incomparable. It's beyond my experience. I've never experienced this in Nigeria before. Why do they off the lights and killing people?
Human rights group Amnesty International say Tuesday's crackdown killed a dozen people, noting that 56 people have been killed since protests began October 7th. They are now calling on the Nigerian government to act.
It's also important for the authorities to investigate those allegations that the CCTV cameras and the street lights were not available at that point in time, and that they were actually removed prior to the incidents that occurred.
Despite the outrage sparked by Tuesday's bloodshed, security forces have again been accused of violence. In these images, police appeared to shoot a man as he laid on the ground after arresting him Wednesday. Tuesday's deadly tollgate clampdown sparked condemnation on a global scale, with angry demonstrators taking to the streets in Cape Town and London. President Buhari is yet to address Tuesday's shooting, but has called for calm. The protests have now morphed, with demonstrators calling for an end to corruption and what they say is bad governance in the country.
We're speaking ahead of an expected address by the Nigerian president, you say, Emmanuel Iga.
Yes, that has been confirmed this afternoon, that the president, at last, is going to address the nation at about 7 p.m. Nigerian time. So it will be good to listen to what he has to say. I think this is pretty belated. You couldn't have a country on the verge of collapse like this, with this kind of huge demonstrations.
The verge of collapse, you say?
Yes, I mean, we were losing our country. Nigeria, I mean, we didn't know where the country was going to go with these protests. And especially with the intervention by the army, which was supposed to be a group that was supposed to be staying outside this thing. The whole thing started with the brutality of the police, and you don't bring in the army, which can only come and act with a heavier force than the police force itself. So we the people started thinking, what's going on? There is a commander-in-chief who is the president, and only him normally can give orders to the military to intervene. And we don't know up till today if the orders came from him. Probably this evening he is going to explain that. And I think it is the fallout of this military intervention that is getting us to see all these infernos everywhere, the TVC, the popular television building being touched, simply because it's popular thinking that the owner of the television station is probably one of the people that influenced the intervention of the military.
And you're talking about the former governor of Lagos State.
The former governor of Lagos
Bola
State, who was
Tinubu.
kept denying, but of course people don't expect him to own, say, well, I am the owner of a TVC. So that has, this radical reaction by formerly peaceful protesters, we can only blame it on the military intervention.
Let's break this down, and for that, we're pleased to welcome to our panel from Lagos, Benga Sisan, executive director of Paradigm International, which advocates for digital inclusiveness. Organizations like yours at the heart of that End SARS protest movement that began and that has continued since a week ago Monday, when the president announced the dissolution of that notorious plainclothes police unit. How do you explain this spiral that led to Tuesday's bloodbath?
Thanks for having me. I think it's a shock to many Nigerians, and at the same time, not exactly a rude shock. That there has been this kind of clampdown. In the first place, the reason why people started, protesting to say, bring this corrupt, and brutal police, to an end is simply because of the brutality that they have been known with. But reality is it's not only the SARS team that is known with that. It is something that is perpetrated by, across the security agencies in Nigeria. So when, Black Tuesday happened, it was something that people expected. Maybe the government would not go this far. It's interesting that the army has now denied. The military has denied that those were not their men. But if those were not their men, well, maybe the president would explain tonight who those people were. But I think it's important to say that the protest until Tuesday was a set of peaceful protests. Yes, there were, cases here and there where people took advantage of the fact that there were protests and things like that. But what you see on the streets now also begs the question, why was there forceful pushback against peaceful protesters? And now that you say we have criminal elements on the streets who are looting and stealing, the police cannot be found. And that is a very curious situation, because does it then mean that the security agencies or the government wants the people to regret their decision of asking for an end to an arm of one of the security agencies? Is that a deliberate attempt by the government? We don't know. But maybe we'll get more answers when the president speaks tonight. But my personal worry is that the president's speech may even do more harm than. It's great. It's commander-in-chief. He should speak. But I worry that his lack of empathy and his aloofness, in matters like this, may even, cause a lot more harm in the sense that he may just muddle the waters a bit more. But it's good that he is finally waking up from his slumber and speaking.
Oluwole Ojuwale, how do you make sense of what happened Tuesday?
Thank you so much for having me once again. I think it's rather an unfortunate situation. 20 years into democratic experience in Nigeria, we couldn't imagine that we'll find ourselves in a situation whereby we go back to the days of military brutality. And it's rather unfortunate that this is happening under a general who professed to have turned to a Democrat. And then I think what we are seeing now, it's just a reflection of how the state has responded to conflict, to issues of grievances over the years, which has always been through the traditional approach to issues like this whenever they occur. And what you can see is that prior to the turn of democracy in 1999, this is the usual experience that we have seen our government. This is the part that we have seen the government doing over time, using state security forces to suppress and intimidate peaceful protesters, to the extent that people were being shot, and you now have what is trending on social media now as the Lekki massacre. And the same experience is also replicated in Abuja, where we have had a situation whereby properties worth in millions of dollars have been destroyed in the past few days. And it's rather sad that the president has not spoken in the light of all these experiences that we have had in the past 2 weeks. There's no any place in the world, there's no any country that professes to be a democracy where you are going to have young people, upwardly mobile people, protesting for police reform. What the youth are asking for is not something that is far-fetched, and I think it's something that fits into the global narration of what is going around the world now, which you can recall the issue of George Floyd in the US. You can also recall issues that happened in the course of COVID-19 in terms of pandemic policing and how people's fundamental rights are being impinged upon, particularly by the agent of state law enforcement, Nigeria Police Force in this instance. So I think we are much more worried that the president has not spoken. And like Session said, I just hope that when he responds tonight, he's not going to be aggravating the situation, because I think the patience of the citizens have been stretched, and even stretched beyond elastic band, and that is what you have seen playing out on the street. You've had counter-narrative, army saying they were not on the scene. You've had counter-narrative of police not taking responsibility for what is happening. But I can tell you authoritatively from evidences that we have gathered locally and that has been escalated globally, that there are overwhelming evidences that the military actually overstepped their boundary by going around to shoot sporadically against peaceful protesters of NSAS movement. And I think there are sufficient evidence now to even petition them against the International Criminal Court in Hague, which a civil society organization has already done already. And the global leaders are also fitting into the narrative. Joe Biden has spoken, Hillary Clinton has spoken, President Trump has spoken, the UK Parliament has spoken. So we have a serious issue at hand. And I think the way the state has handled the matter has actually, it has not portrayed Nigeria as a democratic country.
Let's pick up on this. The military initially denying involvement. However, the governor of Lagos State confirming soldiers were indeed there, something that Amnesty International told us they have proof of, having seen the video of what happened. The governor promising an investigation, at the same time pointing out that only the federal government can send in the army. The same Babajide Sanwo-Olu who imposed that curfew on Lagos Tuesday and called on protesters, well, to effectively take him to their leader.
Many of our youths at the Lekki Toll Plaza insisted on continuing with the protest. Sadly, there was no leadership to appeal to, as they had continually maintained that remaining leaderless was indeed a strategy for them.
Benga Sisan, your reaction?
So I think that one of the people that need to answer questions on the sad events of Tuesday is Mr. Jide Sanwo-Olu, the governor of Lagos State. And I say this because, unfortunately, as he has been, he's been praised for, visiting people, taking pictures. Obviously, I mean, he should visit people. He's the governor of the state. But rushing to say that there was no fatality, and then coming back to say, oh, there was someone who died, and then now literally throwing the president under the bus to say that he called the president twice and the president didn't respond, but at the same time was busy sending messages to people and making it look like the people who were doing the wrong things were the protesters. Questions need to be answered because there's now a back and forth between the governor's office and the owners of the infrastructure at the toll gate, the LCC, the company. The company says they shut down, the billboard that was providing lighting for the area because they were worried and because they were responding to the president's the governor's announcement of a curfew. And also, the governor has now said that the equipment that were removed are not exactly the CCTV. They were just the monitoring cameras. And the answer, what he has said now is that they will submit the footage from the CCTV as evidence to the panel. But I think a good question to ask the governor right now is, did you see the footage? When you saw the footage, what did you see? I think it would have been the easiest thing for the governor to at least provide some clarity. Because what he has done by throwing the president under the bus is to increase the pressure so that by the 7 p.m. broadcast, if the president does not answer the questions of the people, then it gets even worse. And unfortunately, one of the worst hit cities has been Lagos. Stories.
I was going to say, Emmanuel Iga, do you agree with that? That the governor of Lagos State has thrown the president under the bus?
Well, the governor of Lagos State, the governor of any state in Nigeria, is the chief security officer of the state. And so if there is any kind of military intervention going to take place in his state, he will be the one to coordinate all that with the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. It doesn't just happen like that. There are procedures. So he can't tell us, the governor of Lagos State, that he wasn't aware of what was going on. And because he put a curfew in place in the afternoon of Tuesday, and they waited until darkness came and started removing the streetlights and CCTV, but now he says it's not the CCTV, etc. But why were those things, whatever they were, being removed at that time? Why did the military have to attack the protesters in the night of Tuesday? There was no hurry. You just put the curfew in place. You could have waited till the next day in broad daylight, and so the protesters can see the military can see them, and then it will be easier for them to maybe talk and see how they can
try to diffuse the situation.
Exactly.
We're going to pick up on this when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate, and we're looking at the anger that's seething in Nigeria after Tuesday's bloodbath at a toll gate in Lagos, where this was coming as the army opened fire on protesters against police brutality. According to Amnesty International, at least 12 killed. From Lagos, Benga Sisan, executive director of Paradigm International, which advocates for digital inclusiveness, is with us. From Abuja, Oluwole Ojewale is with us, assistant program manager for the Clean Foundation, which works on police reform, and political consultant Emmanuel Iga, director of Phobos International. Our panel mentioning it in part one: the European Union, the United Nations, Hillary Clinton, Mike Pompeo, all among those condemning what happened at Lekki Toll Plaza on Tuesday. The stars are out as well. Everyone from Rihanna and the actor Idris Elba taking to social media, as well as the likes of Kanye West and Queen Bee herself, Beyonce, on Instagram, calling on fans to donate to specific Nigerian charities and advocacy groups. After Manchester United's win over PSG Tuesday, Nigerian striker Odion Judy Gallo was blunt.
Citizens, we are calling you guys, the UN, to see to the matters. And I want to call my brothers and sisters back home to remain safe. Be indoors, please don't come out, because these governments, they are killers, and they will keep killing if the world did not talk about this. God bless you all, and remain safe. One Nigeria. We move.
The world is talking about it, Emmanuel Iga. How do you explain that? The fact that you've had all these reactions from around the globe. I mean, we've had a lot of fatalities since the start of the week in Guinea, for example, after the presidential elections. But Nigeria's captured the world's attention.
Well, I think many Nigerians will say at last, because for days on end, over 1 week, 10 days, these demonstrations have been on with millions of Nigerians out in the street, only asking for justice to be done, asking for employment, asking for better governance, etc. They were out there in the street. But they didn't seem to be seeing much international interest in the media on it. I think what has changed the whole thing now is when this, on Tuesday, this thing turned into a situation of massacre of the youths, where we don't know yet how many youths may have died. Amnesty International says 12, but a lot of them have been injured. And of course, when it takes this turn, then of course all the media have to turn their attention on Nigeria. But it's true, many of the showbiz, because Nigeria is very active in the world showbiz. A lot of our musicians and stars in Nigeria really called up their friends in the USA, Kanye West, all those people like Davido. They were very, very active, calling their friends over there so that they could talk about it and get the media to talk about it. So Nigerians now can be happy to at least see that there is total world attention on what is going on.
Benga Sisan, let's turn back the clock to when the rest of the world was not paying so much attention to these protests. They don't fit a traditional pattern. A lot of the disgruntlement, I know, is the police, trying to shake down people like yourself because you're upwardly mobile in the tech sector. Describe a little bit the antagonism that's there.
I'm even a bit lucky. I'm a lot older now. I'm 43, and the profile, unfortunately, happens to be the cream of our intellectual capital, which is young people who are like literally hitting their heads against the wall to make a success of many of their ventures. By the way, when those young people do succeed, the government will be the first to release a statement to say, oh, this example of a Nigerian. And what has happened is we've got this corrupt and, terrible, brutal unit that takes advantage of many things, including accusation of young people of committing cybercrime. So things like owning an iPhone or an expensive phone, or things like, looking a certain way to them, like, sporting dreadlocks or driving a Benz or anything considered flashy. We've had scenarios of people who have literally died because they were accused of driving a car that they cannot afford, or who have disappeared and have been in police custody. But, I know you were talking a bit about international attention a while ago. While I'm glad that is happening right now, I think that, it is not even the most important part of this conversation. The most important part of this is that for once, Nigerians across the political spectrum, Nigerians across, the natural fault lines like religion, like age that were, taken advantage of before, across all those spectrums, everyone seems to have a story of the brutality either of the police or of this particular unit, and that's one of the reasons why the NSAS protest and campaign has been successful. Because unlike other things that maybe it's just the middle class that can feel it, this goes all the way to even the top echelon of society.
Oluwole Ojuwale,